Okay, so as we continue with our Carriers of His Presence series, this morning I want to talk about the widow's oil as we begin to discuss increasing our capacity so that we are able to contain God's presence. And this is coming from 2 Kings, the fourth chapter, verses 1 through 7, that reads from the NIV version as thus. The wife of a man from the company of the prophets cried out to Elisha, "Your servant, my husband, is dead, and you know that he revered the Lord. But now his creditor is coming to take my two boys as his slaves." Elisha replied to her, "How can I help you? Tell me, what do you have in your house?" "Your servant has nothing there at all," she said, "except a small jar of olive oil." Elisha said, "Go around and ask all your neighbors for empty jars. Don't ask for just a few. Then go inside and shut the door behind you and your sons. Pour oil into all the jars, and as each is filled, put it to one side." She left him and shut the door behind her and her sons. They brought the jars to her, and she kept pouring. And when all the jars were full, she said to her son, "Bring me another one." But he replied, "There is not a jar left." Then the oil stopped flowing. She went and told the man of God, and he said, "Go, sell the oil and pay your debts. You and your sons can live on what is left." A powerful word from God that, if taken in context and taken as it was given, gives us some clues as to what God is saying to us today. Because one of the things is that we want a lot of things from God. We ask God for a lot of stuff, but do we make the preparations that's necessary for us to hold more of God, to be able to receive the things that we are requesting? Because God can't pour into something where there's no capacity. You can't pour into something where there is no capacity. You ever try to pour the last little bit of something into a container, but it's just enough to make the container overflow? Because there's no capacity left for just that little bit. So we want to talk about increasing our capacity. The first thing I can say is that the oil will only flow where there is room. And when we look at the text in verse 3, he said, "Borrow vessels," but not just any vessels. They had to be empty vessels. So let's talk about that for a moment. That tells me that God already knew that she had not prepared for what she asked for. She was asking for help. And when he asked her, what did she have in her house? Or how can I help you? She said, "I don't have anything except for a small jar of olive oil." She wasn't prepared to receive. And I think a lot of times that's where we are. We want things, we need things. We cry out to God for help, but we have done nothing to make room in our lives for what we ask for. God only fills what you prepare. Have we prepared for what we ask for? You know, this makes me think about, because we've talked about the calling. And the word says that many are called, but few are chosen. And could it be that those that are chosen are the ones that took the time to prepare to walk in the calling of God? Think about that for a moment. You're called of God, and you think you're called to be a pastor and you want a church, but you haven't prepared yourself to know anything about administration. You haven't prepared yourself to know anything about counseling. You haven't prepared yourself to know anything about exegeting scripture or hermeneutics. You've done nothing to prepare yourself for where you want God to take you. And the same thing applies when we're asking God to inhabit our temple. But our temple is so full of stuff. Where's God supposed to be? And even as I'm beginning to talk about it, I'm thinking about that vision that God gave me of placing me in that dark room where there were just boxes and crates, and it was dark and it was damp. I could hear the water dripping, but there was nothing that I could see. That the sight that God gave me didn't work until He handed me the mop and the broom, and I started to clean up the room. And once I started to clean up the room, I could see where the ministry was needed. I could see those that needed the gift that God had placed. But I couldn't see before because I didn't prepare. I didn't prepare the way for the site. I didn't prepare the way for the ministry. Preparation is key. Because, see, she didn't know that the measure of her miracle was determined by the size of her preparation. And I want you to notice something else. Elisha didn't do it for her. He told her what to do. Go around and ask all your neighbors for empty jars, but don't ask for just a few. You do it. I'm not going to do it for you. You do it. She had to make that space to receive what she needed. The next thing is that capacity requires emptiness, because he emphasized the fact that, yes, go get these vessels, go get these jars, but make sure they're empty. Because, see, God can't fill somebody that's full of themselves. And I know that we all have wants, we all have desires, we all have needs. But sometimes those are the very things that block God's presence in our lives, because we are so full of stuff that we want, or stuff that we have and are afraid to let go of, that are nothing but stumbling blocks and hindrances that we can't receive even what we have asked for, not even taking into account what God is trying to give us. I think about all the sermons that I've seen where they started talking about the baggage that we carry and how we try to walk through the narrow gate with all of that baggage because we won't let go. Never knowing that whatever it is that we're holding on to, that what's on the other side of the gate is much better. For whatever reason, we as humans, we have a tendency to want to hold on to the familiar because we can't see what's unfamiliar to us we can't control that which we don't know, which we don't recognize. And it becomes an issue of control because letting go of all this stuff, becoming an empty vessel to be filled, we don't control what God fills us with. Irregardless of our minds telling us is better than what we have. But just the fact that we can't control it. And what we don't understand, because we look at emptiness as if it means that we're lacking something. And in our society, if we have lack, it means that we are unsuccessful. It means that we are unproven, that we are not blessed, and that's not true. That lack means readiness. It means that you have cleared out the cobwebs. It means that you have thrown out the trash. It means that you have prepared the space for what's coming. And it didn't matter that she had to borrow it because she didn't have it, but it still had to meet criteria in order for God to fill it. But it also requires obedience. She could have gone in the house and sat down and said, okay, he's just crazy. She could have gone in, she could have sat out and got the jars and went in, but not shut the door, like he said. Or she could have gone around and got 2 or 3 jars and called it a day. But it requires obedience. Because let me tell you something, you have a small jar of olive oil, and you're sitting in this room filled with empty vessels. And this man says, pour into each vessel. I don't know about y'all, but my mind is saying, I don't have that much oil. What you want me to do? Put a drop in each one? And I don't even think I have that much. But it took faith to obey because what she had didn't seem like it was enough to do what she was instructed to do. But see, we have come to a place where we feel like that 4-letter word obey is a bad word. We take it out of our marriage ceremony. We want to overlook it when we start talking about our dedication to God or to a certain church or whatever. Because see, the truth about it is we want the glory, but we don't want to pay the price for it. Because that price is obedience. And the question is, will you obey? I just found this week, back in September of 2024, we did a conference. And we had my pastor, my bishop, come down, and he gave me a prophecy. And one of the things he said is that God's going to ask you to do some stuff, and he's going to trust you to do this, but it's going to sound crazy. It's going to look abnormal. The thing is, can you obey God? Because this was abnormal what God required of this widow. So when God comes to you with the abnormal, when God comes to you with the crazy, the thing that's going to cause people to ridicule you, for people to talk about you, for people to despise you, will you obey God? Or are you still stuck on accolades from men? Are you still stuck on being desired by people? Are you still stuck on protecting your brand? Because you got to understand that Your value increases as your obedience deepens. How can you become not only a carrier of God's presence, but a vessel that he can use if you can't obey what he asks you to do? And I know that's hard for us. We have that I can't even remember the kind of parenting. Oh, gentle parenting. And you can pick out in a crowd the people that do gentle parenting. You can look at how they look and how stressed out they are. Gentle is good for some things, but not for everything. And it's the same way with us adults. There are times when God can just put his arm around us and redirect us. There are other times that he has to knock us upside our heads. There are times when he has to put us on restriction, not for a week or two, but for decades, for us to learn to obey his voice that he knows better than we know. Will you obey? So where are we thus far? We have to prepare for what God is bringing. We have to prepare for his presence. We have to prepare for the things that he's called us to do. We have to prepare to receive those things that even we asked him for. We have to realize that capacity requires emptiness, and that emptiness is not lack. It is not anything negative. It is our readiness to walk in all that God has for us. But we also have to understand that even with those two things, that we have to be obedient to God and to his word. That we can't just want the glory without the cost. We talked 3 separate weeks about the cost. Go back and watch those. They're on YouTube. What the cost means. We talked last week about what it meant for us as fallible flesh to become a vessel for God to use. We talked about that last week. But I want to call your attention to something else that Elisha said to the widow. He required her to close the door. In verse 5, it says, she shut the door. We live in a society where just about everything in our lives is upfront and public. We're on social media. We tell people what we eat. We show them where we live. We share with them all the things that we do. We share our trips. We share our accomplishments. We share our failures. We share when we lose. We share when we win. But there are some times in the things of God that have to occur in private. And for us being as public as we are, that is difficult for most of us. Because see, we want people to see that we are blessed. We want people to see that we're successful. We want people to see what we can offer them. mainly because we can market that. But I want you to see that he told her to shut the door. Because sometimes you got to separate yourself from noise, from distraction, from comparing yourself with others. But sometimes you've got to separate yourself from people, from situations, from places. Because if you don't, it becomes an issue when God is trying to indwell or infill your spirit with more of Him. Because let me tell you, if you don't know, everyone has an opinion. And one thing about it, they don't mind sharing their opinion with you. And I'm here to tell you their opinion doesn't matter. There's only one opinion that matters, and that's God's opinion. That we have to quit being the microwave video society and look at God's word. Keep it in context and do what it says. I know that my people that are on here, most of them know, one might not know, but this past week, somebody hit me up in Messenger just to tell you about people's opinions and sent a video that talked about a reformation and how they don't use women in certain ways. I sent back one particular comment to him and said, that's no longer true. And when I did that, he attacked. And what he was trying to say, because once I did that, he came back at me, do you believe the Bible? And I knew exactly where he was going. And I said, you don't want to have this conversation. And I referred him back to the Old Testament and asked him to go back, read it, and make sure he read it in context. From there, he said, well, who made you a bishop? What qualifies you to be a bishop? Have you read what the Bible said the qualifications of a bishop is? And I said to him, if you don't agree, then unfollow me and don't look at what I do or who I am. I also told him that it's not my position to prove that I'm called. It's his to discern that I am. And I brought up this situation for the mere fact that people have opinions. And if you pay too much attention to people's opinions, or you allow them to dominate your thoughts, they will eventually determine your actions and cause you to miss God. You can agree to disagree, but there are times when God will cause you to go into a private place to interact with Him so that He can work on you. And it's not everybody's business, it's not everybody's concern. That is the time when you need to separate yourself and go into a place of consecration. We talked about consecration because at that point, your cry should be, Lord, stretch me, expand my capacity to carry you. And it's not for everybody to see. Because if you watch at the end of this story, where she did what he asked her to do, and she went and she told the man of God what happened, he said, go sell the oil and pay your debts. Then you and your sons can live on what is left. That when she met the criteria, she actually received what she was asking for in the beginning. And that's the thing. We want something for nothing. We have these spirits of entitlement that tells us, okay, we are God's child. And as his child, no matter how we act, we should be able to get what is God's. It doesn't work that way. Did it work that way for you with your children? I hope not. That there's criteria that we have to we have to meet in order to increase our capacity to a place that we can inhabit the presence of God. Because the measure of your feeling is determined by the measure of your surrender. And I think I talked about it last week. That word surrender was always a problem for me. But I have learned to sing and live the song, I surrender all. Because that is the only way that God can come and inhabit me and take my life where he needs it to be. Next week, we're going to talk about when God fills the ordinary. But until then, if you have to catch up, catch up. We're on YouTube as carriers of God's presence. Look us up. Look us up on Facebook at Lighthouse Community Outreach Centers. They are also posted there. God bless you and heaven shine upon you until we meet again next week. Hallelujah.